Welcome to the Compliance Experts podcast, hosted by Vartan Consultancy. Miles Vartan and his guests, as experts in compliance and risk management, will guide you carefully and with clarity through the many sectors of compliance like health and safety, ISO and operator licenses, and the complexity of customs regulations. They'll also be talking about the latest legislation, global trade news, and the hot topics as they happen.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Compliance Experts. Today, based in Felixstowe, as some of you know, we're going to talk about the Sizewell C project, and we're going to talk about new nuclear, and we're going to talk about opportunities for companies in this area. So a little bit of background and context. The government's promoting, and you will all have seen this in the press, the importance of nuclear power, both in terms of providing the country with a consistent and reliable baseload of electricity, as well as being a key part of the country's strategy to work towards a negative carbon footprint. Locally, the potential build of a new power station at Sizewell brings huge opportunities for many companies. Construction site, and it is a construction site, will be large, whatever adjective you want to use, immense, huge, with tier one suppliers continually working to protect people from harm. Any injury on a construction site, of course, is unacceptable, and the nuclear industry being no exception to this. So we're not just talking about safety in nuclear, we're really talking about safety in a working environment. We're very fortunate today to be able to talk to three very experienced local Sizewell B and C managers, all with a wealth of experience working within a major part of the UK's critical national infrastructure. Mark Scranger is Lifetime Programmes Lead and Sizewell C Interface Manager, looking at the extension of Sizewell B Power Station. Sean Verrill, Technical and Safety Support Manager at Sizewell B Power Station. And Steve Carroll is the Sizewell C Senior Supply Chain Lead. Morning, everybody.
Morning, Miles.
Morning. Thank you for joining us. And I feel very humbled to be in your presence, as although I have a health and safety qualification, and I used to run rail terminals, and I've worked in warehouses and worked with lorries and supply chain. I've limited experience myself of working on construction sites. The first one I did work on was the extension of the Salthouse Hotel in Ipswich, where they put 6 floors and a full extension onto the side of the hotel. And I was in charge working with the company who cladded the outside of the hotel. And it was only when I got onto the ground floor of the hotel that it was freezing cold. I had my hands in my pockets, had all my PPE on, and the guy showing me around said, "Why have you got your hands in your pockets? We're now entering the most dangerous part of this operation. Every trade has put their kit on this ground floor. There's multiple trip hazards. If you fall over, you're going to damage your face, so please have your hands out." So there you go. So we are going to be introducing a lot of companies into a nuclear context in construction. Sean, when a new company turns up at Sizewell, having, I think, spent, and maybe you could clarify this, having spent a long time becoming qualified and permitted to work on site, how do you welcome them? How do you receive them? What are the first messages that you're having to get across to them when they arrive?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Miles. You know, we within the nuclear industry take our very special responsibility for managing nuclear very seriously. You know, we recognise, particularly on the operational sites, the extent of our responsibility to not just generate electricity safely, but also to protect the public from the operations and what we do here. So, you know, we put a lot of investment not just into our staff, but also into our contract partners who work here to make sure, first of all, that they understand what it means to work safely from a conventional health and safety perspective, but also what it means in terms of the special nuclear part, you know, about some of our high standards we expect, the quality standards we expect working within the nuclear industry. And that applies just as much to the construction of a new plant as it does to what I've been experienced in over the last 30 years, which is the operation of an operational plant. So we go through, and Steve, our colleague on the line here from Sizewell C, has an extensive background in the supply chain area and can add to what I'm going to say. But we put a lot of investment up front with our suppliers, ensuring they understand what it means to work on the plant, both construction and operationally. And we go through quite an extensive induction process with anybody working on the station. And then the standards that we set through that, we then reinforce on a daily basis through the interactions of leaders, through the training they receive, and through the encouragement of feedback and engagement with the workers who come to the site.
Well, many years ago, and it is many years ago now, I think it's 10 years ago, I went to the first suppliers conference up at Newmarket, where EDF said that they were wanted to intend to build 2 power stations in the UK. And I remember the conference room there being filled with over 200 people, all very interested and intrigued as to what was going to be said. And I remember the director of operations standing up and saying, we start every day and every meeting with a safety message. And you could almost see the cynicism spread across the room going, what does this mean? Why are we've come here to learn about how to build a power station, and they want to talk about trips, slips and falls and want us to interact for 10 minutes. That's the real thing, isn't it? I mean, that is something that you do every day at Sizewell.
That's absolutely true. And in fact, today we started all of our key meetings with a message. Just interesting, I'll just share with you, our messages this week have been centred around National Inclusion Week in the UK. But what we do is we try and translate that set of messages into what that means for safe working on the station. So the message of this week, today's is, what are the key aspects of building a strong connection in relation to safety? And so that engages the leaders, the staff, the contract partners in conversations at the start of every single day. And today was about how do we build stronger teams? What do stronger teams do in terms of helping us with our safety performance on the site? And it's quite an engaging conversation that can spur. And the message is different every single day of the year, themed around a whole host of issues from health and safety, nuclear safety, environmental security. And it's all about keeping the safety message fresh through everybody working on the site. So that is very real, Miles, yes.
So in terms of, you hear people talking about 360-degree feedback, and if I stopped anybody, I imagine I would be disappointed if I stopped anybody on site at Sizewell B, and when we get to C, be the same, and not expect them to understand about health and safety. So, because I'm sure with the approach that you adopt, and I know EDF live every day, that everybody on site, working on site, is going to, health and safety is not going to be a subject which is going to be foreign to them. Do you find on a day-to-day basis that you get observations being fed up to you from the workplace in terms of, we don't think so-and-so is taking this very seriously, or that dumper truck driving through the middle of the plant has gone too fast, can you sort it out? Do you get much of that feedback from the workers?
Miles, it's Mark. I'll just add a bit around that question. So I think it's fair. The way you frame it is almost slightly incorrect. We, as a business, as a community, we live and breathe safety every day. Mm-hmm. So we work really, really hard actually with the philosophy of peer-to-peer coaching, for example. And what we mean by that is we're all human. We need to recognise our inherent human frailties and weaknesses, and actually encourage each other to do the right thing. So in terms of, do we receive upward feedback? Yes, we do, but it can be as much about our own behaviours as it is about the workforce at large. Yes. We try to establish a culture on site where everybody feels free to challenge everybody else, just to correct those minor things, that the human frailties, that ultimately make sure we all stay safe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Miles, Steve Carroll, building on that, we've got a corrective action program where people can raise issues. We can trend them, lower level issues, lower level incidents, minor accidents, cut fingers. We can look at the data and then work out how that could potentially lead to a more significant accident and prevent it. So we really encourage people to report those minor events.
Steve's point now is really important. We talk about a zero harm safety culture, and we genuinely mean it. So the industry may be slightly unique in the extent to which we drive safety. We literally do record and investigate things as low level as a paper cut to a finger, because we see all of those small safety issues as being the bottom of a triangle, which if we eliminate, we won't have the larger events and the larger problems.
Mm-hmm. So there are going to be a large number of people who have never worked in nuclear. They're not going to go anywhere near the nuclear island, but they're going to be working within a nuclear construction site. I know that the Nuclear Skills Academy have got qualifications like the Triple Bar Nuclear New Build Site course, which looks at features of a strong safety culture, what to do in the event of a near miss, recognising safe and unsafe behaviours. I could go on. So people will do the course. And just going back, I suppose we're almost rounding the circle here. And how are they inducted onto site? What type of induction would you put someone who is new to new nuclear when they arrive? What could people expect?
So I think, Miles, I'll take that. So the induction for any contractor or any worker is the same, whether they're EDF staff or a contract partner. And what we'll do is we'll sit them down in a classroom. First of all, we'll talk them through the site, a bit of familiarisation. What our alarms might sound like, for example, if it's a fire alarm, what does it sound like? If it's a local to each building, what does it mean? What to do in the event of that fire alarm, where to go, things like that. So we're talking, routine safety information. We then take them through, and this is in the existing nuclear industry. We take the partners through a virtual simulator. So we will show them what good looks like, but we'll also show them through real examples. And the simulator we've got at Sizewell B is fantastic. And people can walk through, spot error traps, look at what could go wrong, look at what's good, and then talk through with the instructor what they would do about it, how they would go about recognising the errors, raising any issues should they have concerns, looking at the PPE, understanding what sort of PPE you need in different areas, and really making sure that they understand through a test what our processes and procedures are just for working on the site safely. That's very generic just to get on site and probably takes about 2 days of full inductions. Then there's more specific training depending on what your role is when you get onto site. And then after your specific training, you've got things like pre-job briefs and critical task briefs. So if you're going to perform a really complex lift, for example, everybody would sit down and fully understand what their role is in that lift, who's doing what, and how the lift will be performed, what sort of weight we're talking about. And then when you get to the point of work, it's about undertaking a point of work risk assessment to look at the hazards. And then if you leave the work phase, it's about doing that all over again to make sure you fully understand it. So, it's not just about let's turn up on site, let's do our job and leave. It actually takes quite a while to ensure that people come and do a good job, but go home in the way they came in.
Juggling and conjuring those thoughts in my mind, I'm thinking about, right, so you're going to have lots of companies who are going to be keen to get work at Sizewell. They're going to maybe apply via tenders and submit information to the procurement commissioning person. How, Steve, do you think that we are going to, when I say we, so that I for those who don't know, I work with the Chamber of Commerce, but in terms of Sizewell, how are the Chamber, EDF, going to assess a company's ability to, I suppose, understand the requirements and then deliver people that suitable level so that they're going to be receptive? They're going to have the ability to understand what you're saying to them and be receptive and be able to fit in safely on site. How do you have thoughts as to how that assessment could take place?
Yeah, we do. So first and foremost, it's about being very, very clear on what the specification is for the work that's going to happen, and you'd put that out in your tender. Then you would go through a process of eliminating companies that can't quite meet the technical requirements of the job. Once you've got to a point where you've got a good list of potential suppliers, you then put them through pre-qualification. So whether it could be ISO 9001 accreditation as a basic, so that you know that company has got a basic quality management system that fits with working in nuclear or working in Sizewell C construction. We then ask for evidence through assessment criteria of where they've worked safely and how they have demonstrated different behaviours through their previous contracts. We might want to pick up references, or in the construction industry, people have worked with a lot of our subcontractors before, so there's operating experience out there. But really, it's through that tender being very, very clear on what we want as a client, and then ensuring that the contractor can deliver those elements with evidence-based facts around, showing us where they've done it before. And then, having the qualifications, the ISO standards and things like that does back up the fact that they're serious about it. And, you've got safety records, and we can do audits as well. If we're talking to a major supplier, we will send an audit team to go and check that they do what they say they do in their paperwork. I think, Miles, you've said it before, if they say we all park backwards because it's more efficient, and people are parking forwards, then they're not doing what they say they do.
Exactly, yeah.
And those are the things we'll be looking for.
There's no hiding place, is there? You at some stage or other, there'll be no dressing it up. If you from the top of a company, you don't display a positive health and safety culture, and that is reflected right through your workforce, and you don't actually pick up people if they're doing things in an unsafe way, or you don't prepare somebody who's coming to work on your site who's unaware of all the safety features on site. If this structure isn't in place and not actually lived by everybody every day, you are going to be found out during the assessment process, and you may not actually get to Sizewell. It's going to be great locally and great regionally for a whole safety culture as an area, because it's going to force people into actually doing what they say they do. How many companies do I go into where they've written down what they do and what they should do, but don't actually do it?
Yeah, I was going to say, Miles, the unique nature of the industry is that we set out very clearly what we expect, but then there are many, many barriers along the journey, from everything from the initial records we receive from contractors or staff saying this is what I'm capable of, right the way through to continually testing, all the way through that journey up to and including when the work physically starts on site, to see if we are getting what we expect to get, and there's no miscommunication, no lack of clarity, and the people are walking the talk.
Exactly.
I think, Miles, one of the key things that Sizewell C will bring is this legacy piece. We know there's about £50 billion worth of investment in our region over the next 15 years. And Sizewell C, being the first one, will act as a catalyst for other investment in the future. And what we're hoping to do, especially around supervision, is create a course with the local colleges with the Institute of Leadership and Management. So it'll be a course that hopefully is going to be LEP funded, where we can really upskill the supervisors in the region, like you say, to upskill us to a better place. So Sizewell C is that catalyst to upskill Suffolk.
When we're watching the news and we're following various incidents and horrible crimes, you often hear the person who's accountable standing up and saying, we will learn from this and we must learn from this, or there are learning points here. Is the nuclear industry a step above other industries in the country in terms of actually learning from mistakes and accidents? Is it something that I imagine you're all going to say yes? Do you actually see that materially every day, that people are actually learning from accident investigations and issues and as post the actual issue?
So Sean here, I'll take that one. Yeah, I think continuous learning, organisational learning is absolutely central to everything we do, actually, certainly on the operational sites here in the civil nuclear industry. It starts from, the initial training that Steve touched on, and the way we induct people into the site, and encourage the open reporting. But every day, in fact, just this morning, as a management team, we review the condition reports, the minor adverse reports that people have raised in the last 24 hours. We review those, make sure that we're taking appropriate priority on following those up and acting on them. But sitting behind that is the whole culture and the training and reinforcement that we've set over many years to encourage people to actually raise those minor near-miss reports. And that is very evident on a daily basis and underpins that concept of continuous learning And as Mark said, if we address the low tier near miss minor quality abnormalities, then you go a long way to addressing the underlying causes of more significant events. So that open reporting piece is so fundamental to us and very visible. And when you talk to people on the site about condition reporting, they will all talk to you quite openly about that process and what they gain from it.
Miles, to add to that, when we investigate an event, I think outside the nuclear industry, you tend to investigate the apparent cause. So, somebody trips over a scaffold pole on the floor. Well, the issue is that somebody's left a scaffold pole on the floor, and that's very apparent. But what we tend to do is get to the root cause of issues. So why was the scaffold pole there? Was there a proper storage rack? Is the route actually fit for purpose? Was the individual situationally aware, and where were they going, and why were they going there? And it's the next. Well, it's not just the next level of detail. It's almost 10 levels deeper than an apparent cause, and that's how you really prevent incidents from happening.
I mean, personally, I'm sort of thinking ahead. I think there's a lot of work here to do to get businesses in the right frame of mind. And I suspect even some tier ones, in terms of refreshing them and possibly re-energizing them in terms of getting everybody aligned to this level of expectation and performance in terms of health and safety, which has to be good. Just changing the subject a little bit then. So 10 years ago, and I can remember those slides popping up on the PowerPoint presentation, and it was all about levels of productivity. So there's huge investment into building a power station initially in Somerset, and it was all about hitting the right levels of productivity. A couple of years on, I saw the same presentation, and because there'd been an accident in France at Flamanville, serious accident, and it was about very, very distinct change in the tone of the presentation. It was about safety and productivity. So you're going to be having, and those being aligned. So you're going to be having, upwards of 6,000-7,000 people on site, and everybody's going to be working to a delivery plan, which is, just goes on for the full length of the contract. Steve, in terms of how that plan is put together, is there contingency built into the plan? Maybe not even contingency, but in terms of good planning, are there safety margins built into the plan so that a job that say in Ipswich, if you're building a hospital, might take a week, do we plan 2 weeks on a nuclear site? Or?
Yeah, it can be. I think what's important to stress is that the plan will show the real time of the activity. A plan sometimes can just show the tool time, so that the duration of the job, whether you're welding in a pipe or pouring concrete. What we're very conscious of is that we need the total time. So, if you're going to excavate, you'll need permits to dig. You'll need to ensure you've got safe systems of work, and you'll need to ensure that you've got a good environment for working whilst you're digging. Oxygen meters, things like that. Mm-hmm. All of those aspects are built into the program, so that there isn't a time pressure on getting the job done. Mm-hmm. It's just a point where you start, and a whole host of stuff we need to do to make sure that the job can be carried out safely before we get to the point where we can actually do the job. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of the time, doing the job is actually quicker than getting ready to do it. And then obviously you need to build in some time at the end of the job to discuss how it went. What went well, what didn't go so well, how can we learn for the next job? And like we're seeing at Hinkley Point now, Sizewell's got the benefit of learning from everything they're doing. They're building 2 reactors. So for the third one at Sizewell, we've got so much experience to build into the program. It's fantastic. And then, we're going to go and build number 4 as well. So, yeah, the program is built around the total time it needs, using experience from everywhere. And that includes from France as well, obviously.
Miles, just to build on that a little bit, so we often talk about in the operational nuclear industry the mantra of if you spend 80% of your time planning, then the 20% of the time doing will be efficient and safe. And there's a very strong mantra there about there's no job that can't be done safely, so it needs to take the time it needs to take to be executed safely.
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing to be able to say. I mean, I think that's just you very rarely hear people talk like that in many areas that we work in as consultancy. To be able to say take 80% of the time to plan and make sure it goes safely, so that your 20% works safely is, I think, is a fantastic statement. I think it's going to be wrong for us not to talk about the environment, and obviously there's huge and great things that are going to happen in Sizewell in relation to minimising our carbon footprint. Hydrogen being one, the production of hydrogen, and a lot of new technology going to be developed. We're looking to have plants driving around the site that are going to be powered by alternative fuels and possibly even hydrogen. We're making sure that every time we're telling people about the prerequisites of working at Sizewell, that we're stressing the need, if they're not already fully aware, of their companies being able to display environmental credentials and a real intent from their own businesses, but also how if they want to interact with Sizewell, how they intend to do that.
Well, Sizewell C is a force for good, and EDF is a force for good. We're not in this just to create a nuclear cash cow. You talked about, the advantages of some of the stuff we're going to be doing: direct air capture, hydrogen production, desalination potentially. It's all about helping Britain achieve net zero by 2050. Every company that wants to do work with Sizewell C needs to have the ambitions and the values and the beliefs that Sizewell C holds. So your credentials as an organisation need to align. So what are you doing as a business to meet net zero by 2050? A few of the companies we're working with now have set their targets on actually 2030. One of the companies we were talking to in Lowestoft last week, who rent out diesel generators, that is their main source of business, has decided that they're no longer going to use diesel by 2023. So you've got to walk the talk, and your organisation really needs to believe and get on board with what Sizewell C is about. It's not just about building a power station; it's about being that force for good in the local community and being a catalyst for this government reaching net zero.
And actually doing it, isn't it? So like the company you've just mentioned, it's actually translating your intent into actions where you are actually going to be doing something that is going to significantly improve the environment. And if you can then apply that to Sizewell, to what you're going to do at Sizewell, then we're all winners. But it's actually taking steps forward each time rather than spending a lot of time expressing hot air and just talking about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Miles, just to build on that a little bit then. So for the slightly more technical listeners, obviously both sites operate under ISO 14001 in terms of an environmental management system. But that really is the baseline. So a little statistic for you. Sizewell B, we currently recycle in excess of 99% of all conventional wastes generated. Mm-hmm. And on some months we do achieve a full 100%. You can compare and contrast that with your success at recycling at home. And then you translate that into a facility with maybe 750 people on it. That's what we mean about environmental protection.
Mm-hmm. And does that include food waste?
It includes all waste, including food waste, in excess of 99%.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. What degree, for those who know the site a little bit, maybe have walked on the beach and seen the dome, and what degree is Sizewell B going to be involved with the build of Sizewell C?
So I'll take that one, Miles. As you introduced me, a key part of the role of my department is Sizewell C interface. Uh-huh. So the extent to which we'll work together will be unrivaled collaboration. One of the strengths of the nuclear industry is the fact that nuclear power plants do work incredibly closely together, whether it's two plants that are just divided by a fence, as we will be with Sizewell C, or whether it's working with the rest of the industry all around the world.
Yeah.
So my team has been established for exactly that purpose. So we need to work very collaboratively together to help Sizewell C learn from the experiences of Sizewell B, make sure that neither site does anything that would inadvertently jeopardise the safety of the other site. So those are things, as part of the comment I made earlier around 80% of your time planning. Those are things we're doing now. We're already giving thought to the successful day when Sizewell C is an operating nuclear power plant, and all of the things we need to do along the journey to help them with that endeavour. So conversations have been going on between Sizewell B and Sizewell C for a good couple of years now about just exactly how we will work together, how we will assure each other's standards, support each other. It's been fully integrated.
A number of us watched, if you call it a webinar, it was the Dome from all about reflecting what's happening in Somerset. It was went live a couple of days ago, and I was quite struck by the inclusion of apprentices in that presentation and how they were involved in that review. But actually, I think the for me, the most inspirational thing which came through that was Nigel Cann, who's is Nigel's site director at Hinckley. I think that's his title. But you listen to Nigel, and I think it would be difficult not to be inspired by what he says. Presumably, we're going to have the equivalent of a Nigel Cann at Sizewell. Anybody stepping forward to be that person?
There will definitely be a Nigel Cann.
Yeah,
but
and don't you agree, Steve, that the way he comes across is
he's fantastic, very inspirational, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And if you look at what they've done down there, you know, to hold that project to the programme through this pandemic has been an epic performance by the whole team. And you know, they're still on track to finish in 2026, and that's an unbelievable achievement, and that is due to the leadership.
The person doing the who facilitated that, doing the interviewing, said to him, "What's exciting you about the next few steps?" And he couldn't contain himself. I mean, there must be 4 or 5, 6 different things that were going to excite him each time. And I think, you know, apart from just the sheer scale of this operation, the fact that we've already spoken about the opportunity to elevate the understanding of safety locally, to have someone like that locally being able to inspire and excite and infuse people. So if I'm 16 and I'm at school and I'm watching the telly and I'm seeing somebody like that pop up on the screen, I'm going to go to school and speak to my teacher and say, what do I have to do to work at Sizewell? So it's I think it's going to be fantastic for the area.
And in terms of porting across that enthusiasm and knowledge, obviously in the early phases of Hinkley Point C, Humphrey Cadou Hudson was the driving force together with Nigel, and he's now at the top of the Sizewell C organisation, bringing that level of enthusiasm and engagement across to Suffolk. Certainly last week, I was at the Lowestoft College, at the Suffolk Sixth Form College, with the Sizewell C team, and you could just see the level of enthusiasm from Humphrey and his team in terms of the drive to get this going and how enthusiastic we are about getting another nuclear power plant in Suffolk.
Yeah, Sarah Williamson was there, wasn't she? So she's leading on civils, and you could see her having to work really hard just to keep her mind focused on what she was supposed to say, because she was taking in feedback from the floor, and you could see her brain working on multiple levels going, they're right, I've got to do this. I mean, we were talking about collaborative competition at one stage, weren't we? I was at Lowestoft as well. And so you've got firms in Suffolk who compete with each other fiercely every day, maybe in metal fabrication. And here's an opportunity for them locally where if they could get together and collaborate, they're going to strengthen their ability to secure work. So I'm struggling to find negatives in this, and really appreciate your time today for us to be able to try and get this message across to companies. If we went round the table, is there a closing point you'd like to make to those who listen to this podcast? It's going to go out across all platforms. So, and actually a lot of people will listen to it who will never ever come to Sizewell, but there will be a large number of companies and people listening to this who want to work at Sizewell. So if you're able to say one thing to somebody listening to this podcast, what do you want them to go away and think about? Don't worry about if we have repetition, but if we went around the table, Mark, what would be your key message to prospective business wanting to work at Sizewell?
Well, I am a local. I was born and bred in Lowestoft, and what I can say about Sizewell, there's so many opportunities. People think of nuclear physicists and the Homer Simpson piece. That's just not the reality of the industry. There's opportunities for absolutely everybody, and the scale of Sizewell C will be so vast that it will really power the Suffolk economy.
Fantastic. Sean?
Well, I think it's just reflecting back on the fact that we've had an operational nuclear power station here on the East Coast for over 50 years with Sizewell A, Sizewell B. And looking forward, we're looking at building a plant with a lifetime of potentially 60, possibly even 80 years. You know, the investment and the input that we're providing to the local economy is huge. The opportunities, as Mark alludes to, are massive for both business and local people. People coming through schools, looking for a future career in the nuclear industry. And I think it's just such an exciting prospect for everybody.
And Steve, how about yourself?
Yeah, so if I can put some numbers to that, 4.5 billion is what we're going to put into this region, and over 2 billion into Suffolk during construction. We're obviously then going to create 900 permanent jobs, as well as permanent vacancies for contract staff as well. So the point being, if you want to be part of that and you want some of that pie, then look at your business, engage with us. The businesses that have been successful at Hinkley Point in winning work and creating a legacy and building their business bigger are those companies that have engaged with us and listened to what we're talking about, changed their values, looked at what we're doing and aligned themselves to us, and they've gained significantly out of it. So that's my one bit of advice. Engage with us through the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce and let's do it.
Exactly. And I suppose I'd be remiss to not say, please go on to sizewellcsupplychain.co.uk and register your business if you haven't already. Well, thank you very much. I think EDF have got a big problem because the three of you are going to be in big demand to come out of the power station and stand in front of people regularly and inspire them like you have us today. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So with those inspirational messages about quality, safety and environment, we're going to finish today. Thank you for listening to the podcast. For those who have listened regularly, you always hear me say, please let us know if there are any subjects you would like to talk about in the future. And if you would like to come on the podcast, please let us know. As you've heard today, if we can get engaging people, experts and technical people on here, to make it interesting, that makes it all a lot easier for me. So thank you very much and have a good day, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Compliance Experts podcast. We highly value your input and welcome any questions, thoughts or challenges for us to tackle in forthcoming episodes. Vartan Consultancy pride themselves in helping customers manage risk and subsequently helping them improve their overall company performance. To speak to Miles and his team, visit vartanconsultancy.com. This podcast is produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk and is the copyright of Vartan Consultancy. This podcast is created for entertainment purposes only. Views and opinions are that of Vartan Consultancy and their guests. Information recorded in this episode was deemed correct at the time of recording. However, we advise you to always check with Vartan Consultancy for up-to-date information and legislation.